Hey, it's Dan Melnick. I'm the CEO and co founder of Zing, and I'm proud to be a sponsor of this podcast. So please check us out today as we can help fuel your business growth. myzing.io. Thank you.
So firstly, thank you very much, uh, Jason, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my channel.
Oh yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Going through your profile, I can see you have done a lot of work and also doing a lot of work. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience.
Okay. Do
Can
you
you please
want me to
introduce
start?
yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jason Ragosta. I'm a writer, director, producer, and illustrator. I have worked on very big films in a small way, and then I've also made my own films, which were smaller, that are more independent films. Most recently, I had a film come out last year called Symphony, Clubhouse Horror Anthology, which is available on most streaming services like Tubi and Amazon and all that kind of stuff, Apple. And it's a horror anthology that I wrote and directed in a section of. I directed the section called Mother Love, which is kind of, if people know horror, it's like Halloween meets the Evil Dead. It's that kind of thing, which was really fun to do. It's very bloody and crazy and scary.
So I've seen some of your trailers. So you're more into fear and horror. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing for a long time, so I've written dramas and I've written sci-fi. But right now, I'm really focusing on horror. That's the majority of what I've been doing. Although I did get paid to write an action film recently, a feature, which was cool. So I got to go back to my action roots a little bit as well. And I love writing that kind of stuff as well, which was very fun.
So where are you from? Where are you based?
So originally I'm from Connecticut, which is on the east coast of the U.S. But then I went all the way across the country to San Francisco, which is where I'm based now. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So basically, originally I went to school at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, and I was trained in classical art studies, like oil painting and sculpting and illustration. And then I decided at a certain point, I think it was my junior year of college, I was like, what do I really want to do? What do I really love? And I was like, films. So I started teaching myself actually out of books, and I got a Bolex camera and I shot my first couple films. One of them is kind of like a music video, I think, set to like a David Bowie song. And then the other one was a stop motion animation film that I shot where I stitched like I took aluminum wire and I made skeletons out of it, and I sculpted oil-based clay over it, and then I stitched leather over it, and I so they were like little posable characters that didn't have to be resculpted every time. And I did this whole thing called Limbs Interdimensional Adventure, which had this like lizard monkey as the main character, which was fun. Um, and then so from there, I got hired at when I graduated, I got hired at a stop motion animation company in East Granby, Connecticut called Reckless Abandon Studios. Uh, Initially, I was hired as a storyboard artist, which I did for about a year, and then I was also eventually I ended up doing prop and set design and building, and then assistant camera work and working with the DP to light the scenes and for all that stuff. So we set up all in stop motion. It's cool. Like the studio get broken up into these large, heavy black curtains that divided up into these cells, and you set up a different set on like a 4x8 table or larger. Maybe you put a couple together for a big set, and you set up a stop motion animator in each one, and so you could have like 4 or 5 cells going at once in a small studio, or like more, if it's like a big film. Yeah. So and then from there I ended up that so Reckless ended up kind of closing down temporarily. They actually reopened later after I moved, but that's when I moved to San Francisco, and I worked at the Academy of Art University for a while as a equipment issue room tech. And what was interesting is, the Academy had one of the largest collections of film cameras, both 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter back then. This was back in 2003. Since then, I think they moved in more into digital cameras. But my experience as a first AC and everything and loading and taking care of the cameras really came in handy there. And then one day I met Diane Baker, who's a actress who was like worked with Hitchcock. She was in Marnie. She was the mom in Silence of the Lambs. It's like take this thing back to Baltimore, that kind of thing. She she asked me a question about like a steady cam, and I recommended a glide cam to her, to go with the cameras she had. And she was like, you know a lot about this stuff. And then she decided to hire me as the stage manager in a new stage that she built at the Academy. And I worked there for several years, basically taking care of the stage, making sure the crew was there. I was dolly gripping, and I got to sit through like hundreds of writing and directing and acting classes, which was really cool. And so I was able to, learn a lot. And I started writing people's master thesis films and stuff like that, which was really cool because we'd get feedback and notes from all the different writing, like all the master's level writing teachers, including Michael Braverman, who ended up becoming my writing and directing mentor on the stage, or in life and on the stage, which was really amazing. I learned so much from Michael. He really beat a lot of bad habits out of me in terms of my writing. And then one of my favorite things that happened is one day I showed up to work on the stage and he's like, Jason, you're directing today. And I was like, but I haven't storyboarded anything. And he's like, I know. And so he taught me. So it's something that directors and DPs have to be able to do. You have to be able to do the math in your head of how to cover a scene. Even in this particular case, I think the scene had 5 or 6 different characters in it. So it was a pretty complex scene. So you have to cover all of those characters in either group shots, singles, and then you have to have your master and maybe a mini master. And we would do it all on the dolly, so there were these more complicated things. Very, very cool. But that broke me of needing storyboards to shoot. I still like to do it for some stuff. I like to do like little animatics. Like for Symphony, we did a little animatic of the whole short that I was able to show the executive producers before we shot it. But one of the reasons for that one is we only had like a day, like one night to shoot it in, or like it was kind of like a night and a half. So we had to be very organized and do that. So after that, as the saga continues, I ended up getting hired on for a year on John Carter, the Disney film. I was an editorial production assistant on that, and I helped kind of like, I was part of the office, the production office that we had over at Fantasy Records, which was in Berkeley. Eventually, we moved the office onto the Pixar lot, which was cool because, the director was Andrew Stanton, who had done Finding Nemo and WALL-E and all those things. When Monsters University 2 finished, I think that's when we moved onto the Pixar lot. And that was right before I was let go. But that was an amazing experience, working with all those guys on that. And then I kind of I did stop motion animation for a few years after that, which was kind of cool, through this website called Tongle. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it like crowdsources like advertising for companies. Yeah. And there were kind of like contests. So I ended up doing 3 or 4 of the stop motion things, and I won, I think, a few of the contests for that. And then, if you look up my name and like stop motion, they'll all pop up on YouTube basically, or at least some of them will. And then from there, I ended up trying to think of the order of it. So I guess I was doing independent film for a long time, like my own shorts, like I did Boy in the Dark, which you showed the trailer of in the video. And then I did a film called ZTV, Sympathy for the Devil, which went to a bunch of really cool horror festivals like Screamfest and Film Quest and all those. We were up for awards. We won a bunch of them, which was very cool. And then I got to work on Symphony. Basically, the way that came together is that when COVID hit and we went to lockdown, a bunch of things happened all at once. The first thing was that this new app called Clubhouse came out. I don't know if you're familiar with that app.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide app. Yeah. And like, so I met a bunch of people through there were like horror rooms, and then there were screenwriting rooms. And through the screenwriting rooms, I met someone named Sebastian Bazile, who ended up being our executive producer and producer on Symphony. And we had kind of met because we were both telling somebody who was running a room, they were like advising screenwriters not to learn screenplay structure, and we were like, no, you need to learn screenplay structure. If you want to throw it out later, that's cool, but at least learn it first. So we kind of bonded over that, and then we became kind of friends. And then one night I saw like this horror anthology room, so I went in.
Yeah, we are
Okay, I'm
back to
back. Sorry about that.
yeah.
I don't know where we left off. Were we talking about Clubhouse?
So you're telling about the experience in Clubhouse.
Right. So one night I saw there was a horror anthology room, and I at the time I just shot a short that was supposed to be in a horror anthology that ended up not working out. So I went in because of that, and that's when they were like, "Oh yeah, let's do a horror anthology," and I was like, and then Sebastian was like, "You're gonna send a script, right, Jason?" I was like, "Yeah." And I wrote one in like 2 days, sent it in, they liked it. We had this awesome like 7-hour note session with all the filmmakers where we went through all the scripts and talked about them. And then what's crazy is like from that first room, like I think 2 or 3 weeks later, Jason Wilkinson and Mark Pritchard, who are two of our writer directors, they both shot their shorts within that quickly, which was insane. And then within 7 months, we had a finished film, which was really crazy. And we got to do a panel at Comic-Con special edition on it, where we got to like go and talk about it. And then we had a nice like screening in LA at the Landmark with like, I think it was like 80 to 100 like horror industry people in Hollywood, which was really cool. We got to go drinking afterward with them. I got to go and hang out with Bonnie Aarons, who's like the nun in like the Conjuring series. So just like drinking beer with her. It was awesome. Met so many cool people that night. So many people that I've been watching for like, my whole life, movies, and like just was in awe of. And then, a year later, the film came out, and we had a Halloween release, which was really cool for a horror film. So like we got all this good press and like everything, and it actually got promoted pretty well. It did get released like in a limited theatrical around the world. I know it was released in Pakistan in theaters, like alongside like two pretty big American films. Like it was like Black Adam, Us, and like See No Evil or something. I forget the name of it. It was about the nun who is like an exorcist or something. It was very cool. It seemed like people were really excited about it there, so that was cool. And then it went to streaming and everything, and now it's kind of become this little cult thing that kind of resurfaces at Halloween, and we do like watch parties and stuff, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. And then also with Symphony, I did 10 posters that I illustrated for it as well. One was a pre-production poster, then there was an official poster, and then there was one for each of the shorts that are in it, which was really cool.
So how many projects you have done in whole?
Total? Well, okay, so if somebody looks me up on IMDb, what's interesting is I'm all 3 or 4 of the Jason Ragustas that's on there. So like some of it has my like super indie work on there, and then there's like my main one that you'll see a picture of me on is kind of my main one. And I have my indie films, which are like I think there's like now 4 or 5 of those that I've done, including Love Hurts, which was one that I was a writer on and also was the director of photography. And then my friend Albert Lopez was the director of that one, and that was like an action film that we did we were shooting it on weekends while we were on John Carter, which was really cool. And actually, a neat fact about it: Mark Andrews, who directed Brave for Pixar, plays like this scarred assassin in Love Hurts, and we like blow him up with, I think, like a little baby bomb or something. It was something ridiculous, but he's amazing. But yeah, but then like, so the other thing that happened during COVID is that I got hired remotely to work at Halon Entertainment, which is in Santa Monica in LA. And I worked there for 3 years as the editorial manager. And so when I was there, I got to work on films like Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Argyle, and Transformers: Rise of the Beast, like those kinds of films, which was really cool. In a small way, like it wasn't like a huge amount of work that we did on all of them, but like basically what Halon does is they do visualization and finals animation for games like Fortnite. They do a lot of the character ads for Fortnite, and then they also do virtual art department work, like on they worked on the first season of The Mandalorian. My buddy Kenny DiGiordano was one of the VAD supervisors on the first season of that show. And what VAD does is they build the environments or make the matching assets that go in the LED wall, so that there's the clean handoff from the virtual set inside the wall to the physical set that the actors are occupying, which is really cool stuff. I mean, what they did with that, it's so amazing, especially for any kind of like car process shoot or like motorcycles, anything that's reflective. Instead of a green screen, which gets, if you pull a green screen in those reflections, it all pulls the thing apart. You have a bunch of holes in your car. But with LED walls, you get the actual lighting from the environment reflected in the car and all of that. And it's just 1,000 times better for that kind of shoot, especially, which has been very cool. For visualization, do you know what visualization is? Should I explain that?
Yeah.
Okay. So with visualization, so like take a film like Transformers, right? If they go to shoot that, those giant robots aren't there with them on set, right? So what visualization does is it allows them to create a kind of more like, nowadays it's like a video game level 3D animation that can use like proper scale and like lenses and camera movement. They even have pre-built like to scale versions of different studios that you could shoot in. So like if you're shooting in Pinewood Studios or like Trilith over in Atlanta, they know how high the ceiling is, and so they'll tell the filmmakers, oh, we just went through the ceiling of the studio, so we got to change that shot, a different lens or like whatever, because obviously that would be a problem on the day, and it just helps them figure out exactly. They can break down very complex VFX shots and know exactly what they have to shoot based on the pre-visualization. And it doesn't dictate what the actors do at all. It has nothing to do with the actors' performances. It just has to do with the logistics of how fast a shot's moving, how it's going to cut into something else, like what exactly they have to get in screen so that it'll all blend together cleanly, basically. And that's pre-visualization. And then there's post-viz, which is when they'll take the plates that are shot on set. So say they shot like plates of where the Transformers go, they'll put the pre-visualization assets back in. So they're like those game asset versions of the Transformers will be cut back into or overlaid into the footage so that the editor on the production can edit and fine cut the film ahead of time. And then what's cool is they also know down to the frame, sometimes, at least if they go ahead of things, what they need for the VFX. So they're paying for like every frame of VFX that they need, because back in the day, there were times when VFX would be completed at a very high cost and then they would end up being cut out. And that's a waste of maybe tens of millions of dollars on the cutting room floor, which is painful, So post-viz can be a really fantastic tool for like high-end action or VFX-driven films to really save money and make sure that that money is spent wisely, because it does run out even though there's a lot of it on those films, Yeah.
So direction on the writing. So which one you like and which one you like to be?
Oh, as far as like, well, so for me they're hand in hand, but I think writing is my absolute favorite thing. Although I really do enjoy, like when I'm on set and I'm directing, another part of me kind of comes alive that I love. But it's like something that happens less often than the other things. Like I'm writing pretty much every day at this point, so and what's cool when you're writing is you can just do anything, like you can write anything. Now, as an indie filmmaker, I can't write anything because I have to work with things that are more readily available. It's not like writing Iron Man or like Star Wars. There you can write anything as long as it's canon and it fits within the world, right? But with indie films, you got to write like, okay, I've got a car, so I can have a car in it, and I've got access to this location, so it'll be there, and I know this actor, so I can work with them maybe. It's built more like that. And you want to have less characters usually, although I've been guilty of having way too many characters in my indie films before, and more contained, so like, cabin in the woods kind of thing, or like they're in a house, like Paranormal Activity would be a good example of a contained one that would be, well, it should be inexpensive, but the way they shot it, it actually ended up being more expensive eventually. But yeah, because they would shoot those for like 6 months as opposed to like 12 or 15 days, which is what a normal indie feature would be, or like maybe 20 or 30 at the most. But yeah, like I love writing. Actually, one of the things I love the most is comic books, because like when I do a comic book, I literally can write anything and draw anything I want. So that, I think, I remember when I was doing my first comic, that's where I like got just giddy, because I was like, oh my God, I could just create reality, like right there. And there was no additional cost to that other than obviously time, which it does. Doing a comic on your own takes a lot of time.
So I saw some of your trailers that that you have worked for. So there is so much perfection. There is so much good quality in visual and
Oh,
also
thank
in
you.
the sound. So where that
Yeah.
skill set you developed and how that storytelling mindset that you developed.
Yeah. So I think I learned a lot on the stage, when I was managing the stage, because we did, I think, hundreds of shoots, with different people. I would be the assistant director or the AD that was helping keeping the shoot moving along, and the dolly grip on those shoots. And then also Diane, she would arrange for these like veteran directors to come from Hollywood. They would come and visit us, and they would direct scenes on the sets in front of the directing students. And seeing these guys, or the directors work on stage, was just an amazing experience, and getting to know them. And a lot of them were just so cool and so laid back. Like it isn't what you'd expect, in terms of like the people that really make it and do really well. They're usually very nice, like chill people, in my experience. At least the old school ones. I'm sure it varies, but yeah, like we had the good fortune to work with some really interesting people and learn from them. Uh, and then as far as like what I do, I've taken a lot of time. I've been doing this for, I think, 24 years now, and I've taken a lot of time to hone my craft and to really and to work with great people. Like getting really good department heads on your crew is going to elevate your game, and doing a lot of pre-production where you discuss everything and go through everything ahead of time, so you're not deciding big things on set. You've already worked out what that is. Everybody's prepared for that. And honestly, like with my department heads, I barely have to even talk to them on set. Like maybe the DP is the one that I talk to the most. And then usually my makeup effects lead, which is usually Margaret Kerrigan. She's the one that I've been working with for a long time. But her and I have gone through everything so exhaustively that I don't even see her sometimes on the shoot until afterward. But everything's there. Usually it's there before I need it. It's amazing. And that's basically, yeah. So I think just hire really talented people for your department heads and let them do what they do and don't get in the way of that is the big thing, you know. And then holding yourself to a high standard as well, and not letting yourself kind of cheat on certain things, because I think a big thing is like editing your script costs just a little bit of time and not a lot of extra money, but like having to force things in post can be worse, or having to reshoot. So it's good to really go through your script and lock it down before you go to shoot. But at the same time, and this is the big thing about being a director that maybe people that haven't done it don't understand, is like it's about over preparing, but then being open to things that you find on set. So if you're working, like, the first take when I work with actors, what I do is I shoot the first take, like even the rehearsal, basically. We'll do a blocking rehearsal where we figure out where people go and stuff. But what I like to do is film the first take, which is the first time we're seeing the actors do it, and I let them surprise me with stuff that I hadn't thought of. That way, if they've come up with something cool that I did, because I know what I want to do, like exhaustively, I'm already tired of it. So I'm like, surprise me, show me something. And, sometimes they'll do such amazing things that I couldn't have thought of, and that's what they bring to it. Their creativity and them breathing life into the character does that. And then what I'll do is I'll just adjust things a little bit and go for that. Because the best stuff that happens on set, like from a professional working relationship with actors and with the crew and everything, is when you kind of what they call capturing lightning in a bottle, which is you can't force that to happen. It's like a chemical reaction that happens on set when you lay the scene right and you let everybody do, like, if they're creatively invested in it or sometimes even stumble into it, you can get something magical to happen on set. And sometimes what it is too is like, classically directors will go up in one actor's ear and like whisper something in them to do something that isn't planned in the scene to see how the other actor will react at a key moment. And there are limits to that. You don't want to do anything like violent or bad or like something that isn't like supposed to happen, as far as that goes. But like they may say a line differently or even change a line, and if the other actor is really in the scene and they're in the moment, they will react to it. They won't be like, hey, that's not what they're supposed to say. They'll like actually react live to something fresh and new that wasn't rehearsed or planned. And sometimes you can get something really magical and powerful out of that, depending on it. And usually you'll shoot it the way that it's written first and then kind of deviate a little if you have time. And you can't always do it, but it can be really cool when it happens. Like on ZTV, there's a scene where Tom Kokanius's character is monologuing to this younger actress who's the daughter of this other guy, and it's this really scary, tense scene. And Tom at first he was like, because I wrote a lot of dialogue there, and he was like tripping over it, and I kept saying back to one every time he tripped over it, and then he was like ah, he's really frustrated, and then he nailed it, and it was so perfect that like in the whole crew were all like in rapt attention to what he was saying. And then Tony's father, who owned the house, opened the front door because he didn't know we were shooting, and everybody jumped. And I was like, okay, we got a movie. This is going to work out. That's the kind of stuff that you want to get. It's like, I was in a clubhouse room and we were talking about like writing and stuff like that. And one of the lit managers in there was complaining that their writers were handing in scripts with like spelling errors and grammatical errors and everything else. And I was like, well, you can fix spelling errors and grammatical errors. They're, like there's spell check, right? But my thing is, does the script actually like make you cry or like make you feel something? Like that's more important than like having every letter perfect. Is like, is there a beating, breathing, passionate heart in this thing that will actually touch people and make them feel something? Is there value that will be brought to people's lives of some sort through the material that would cause it to need to exist, as a film? Because yeah, I mean, the other thing about a screenplay is it's not a final document. It's not like a novel or something like that. It's just a blueprint that leads people to set to make the film, which is the final product. So nobody will ever see those spelling errors, you know, in the script. Not to say that people should do that. Like I try to spell everything correctly, but occasionally something will slip through, you know. There's a lot of words in there. Yeah.
And tell me about the sound system that you used for your film.
Yeah, so we have a really great sound guy that we work with, Paul Wells, who was brought on by my producer Marissa Gray, who's amazing. And he's just fantastic. He's there with his little cart. I barely even hear or see him like during the shoot. Like he's just there. He's like a sound ninja, just getting everything. And yeah, you know, sound is a very important part of filmmaking, and it's not something to be underestimated or skimped out on. And then having a great sound mixer in post as well. We have Nick Bazzone, who's our guy, and he's fantastic. And yeah, he's done a really, really amazing job, especially with Mother Love and Symphony. There's so many layers to what's going on because there's like a conversation going on in the phone that she's talking to, as well as what's going on in the space. And we had lights rigged up to do lightning, and we had like a storm outside. We had like a PA outside with a hose spraying water at the windows to make it seem like it was raining. And we had the water like trickling down, and if you look close you can see the shadow of the water, you know, on the walls, you know, trickling down and stuff. It was very cool. Yeah.
So working for different projects, it can be Mother Love or Symphony or Boy in the Dark. So what you learned and what you understood.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was interesting. You know, on Boy in the Dark, I got to work with Tony Boy Marin, who's now Tony Marin. I actually saw him recently. If people look at my Instagram, they'll see him all grown up, which is kind of cool. And you know, he was like the most serious, most amazing actor on set. This little kid, you know, and he just killed it. And like you can see it in his performance because originally I had written a lot of dialogue, you know, in it, but I found out that the less he spoke, because he was communicating so much with his eyes and his face, he was like emoting so much, the more we were inside his head and we felt what he was feeling, which is the whole core of that film. So by taking out all the extra dialogue in that particular case, it actually made the film stronger, and it really made it resonate with people, and it made it touch them emotionally, you know. And there's this very powerful shot that's in the trailer where he's just looking kind of into the camera at the end of the trailer. You know, in reality, he's looking into the eyes of this drawing of this creature he's posted on the wall of his bedroom, which is his way of kind of marking his territory, or like, you kind of finding his place in the world in a way. It's like a metaphor for that. Yeah, so that was really powerful. But what was funny is he was amazing on every day. And then we had one day on the playground with the other kids. And once he was around other kids, he's a kid, you know, so they're hanging out, they're like playing video games on their phones. And it was a lot harder to wrangle them on that day because they're kids, and that's the way kids are, you know. But like on his own, very serious actor. Around kids, he's a kid, you know, which of course he is and has every right to be. So it was just very interesting because your head is so in the film, and like you have to go so fast, and like there's so many little things you have to deal with on set. It's easy to forget that stuff, you know. But it's important to know that like if you're working with child actors, they're children, and they're gonna do what kids do, you know, and that's not always gonna be just the job the whole time. It's like on Mother Love, similarly, we had an even younger child on set, Rurik, who was amazing. And what was really funny is like, you know, I wrote the role for him. I was like his godfather. I know him very well, so I wrote him a role where he could just exist in this role, and we're good. Like I knew he's gonna have an iPad in front of him, and he can do stuff on it, and it'll be fine. And then like he'll do this. Um, and what was funny is my ADs on the project got worried, and they started like yelling direction and stuff at him, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And at one point, one of them said the floor is lava, and we lost 45 minutes of shooting time because he was running around at full speed, you know, the apartment, because he's like a 4-year-old, you know, it's like that's what he's gonna do. But what was really cool is then after that, like we had Corinne Renzulli there. She was like the set teacher and was taking care of him, and his father, and the actress Christine, our lead actress, who's amazing in the film. They all went and worked out this whole thing for the ending where he's like cheering and jumping up and down. And in his mind, I guess what they worked out with him is that he's seeing Spider-Man fight Venom or something off screen. In reality, in the film, his undead mother is dismembering this killer that tried to kill them. But he was having a blast, and like, his dad was the guy in the mask that was the killer. So like, in between takes, he's like got his mask up and he's playing with the nose of the killer's mask and stuff. So he was totally having fun on set. And like, there's one shot, if you look closely, we had to give him like a Kinder egg to eat as a treat in the cupboard to keep him still because he kept standing up. We had built a special one that didn't have like a top and like could take the side off and stuff in the cupboard. And he just kept standing up. So we gave him this little treat. So he's got chocolate all over his face. It was funny, but you got to do whatever you can to get the shot, Yeah.
And what are the genres you are into?
What was that? Sorry.
What are the genres? Like it can be horror
Oh, yeah,
or
genres.
romantic.
So, yeah, I've written, like I said, I most recently wrote an action feature, which was really cool. I got to write like a bank heist scene, which was awesome. That's like a bucket list check there. And all kinds of different, the fun thing about writing action, you look at something like John Wick or like Die Hard with a Vengeance or like something like that. There are all these different types of fights you can have, right? Like you can have a narrow hallway fight or like an elevator fight or close combat, close quarters. In The Old Man, they did a fight in a car, that kind of thing. Like if you watch the like Raid or Raid 2, there's a lot of different stuff where they do it awesome, revitalize car chases and everything. So like, getting to do these different types of action sequences, I really had fun leaning into that and playing with that. But from like, I'd say the film that I wrote kind of hits at a budget level of like the first John Wick, which was cool, So it's a little more on the smaller side, but with the potential to grow into a larger franchise. Yeah. And then I've written drama, which I enjoy, but I like having the creatures and all the other stuff. It's too much fun. And then sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I'd love to get into that again at some point. But for now, I have like, I think 17 or 18 projects in various stages of developing right now that I'm trying to do. So some of them are even animated, like adult horror. I have a feature that I'm currently co-directing with somebody who's already very established, based on a novel that's really exciting. It's kind of like this horror, kind of like slasher feature thing. And then I have a animated horror series that I'm putting together right now that's going to get pitched to some of the major streamers, which I'm really excited about. And that's been a really fun experience of like plotting it all out and like laying it all into the different episodes and getting all that set. And then once that's done, that's the stage I'm in right now. I've got like half of that done. And then I can write the pilot, which I've had the outline for a while, but I got to make sure it lines up with all the other stuff before I can write it. And then that'll be kind of good for now, and I can hop onto other stuff. But yeah.
So these are your upcoming projects.
Potentially, the thing about development is, it's good to have a bunch of them because you don't, and with different people. So I'm working with a bunch of different producers and production companies with various projects, and then whichever one gets money and gets greenlit first will be the next one, so I don't really have control over that. All I can do is come up with the best stuff possible and work with the best people that I can find to give it like the best percentage chance of happening. Yeah. But it's been going really well, and the people that I'm working with are all doing really cool stuff and have different things going on, and it just becomes this kind of woven fabric that you get worked into that kind of rises, hopefully. And yeah, so there's a lot of really cool stuff going on, a lot of different types of projects that budget levels from like 0 to like, tens of millions. So yeah.
And what is your way of expression in movie or film that you do? What 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 is your intention to tell anything that you have in your mind?
Intention. Yeah, I think, I really like how in certain films there's like a certain level of philosophy or life philosophy in it. Like, I was of the generation where we saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater when we were really little. So like Yoda being like, there is no try. You either do it or don't. You either do, yeah. And it's like, stuff like True Detective. You see Russ Cole, Matthew McConaughey's character, going through all of these like existential kind of crises and like trying to figure out like what life's even about and stuff like that. I find that stuff interesting. I think the main thing is like showing growth of character, overcoming obstacles, potentially in ways that people wouldn't expect. I've had my own experiences. Like I had this thing where like a brick was thrown through a window and it like split my head open, and I like had this kind of like existential event that like led to kind of a spiritual journey where I learned a lot about my own existence and like stuff like that. So I try to share that stuff and kind of weave it in without it being like over the top or getting on a soapbox about it. Like I'm not preaching it, but like, it's there to kind of help people that may get stuck with things, or like to give a little perspective, because people sometimes feel trapped in either their lives or their circumstances, and there's a whole world outside of that is there, but when you're in that tiny trap spot, it's very hard to see out of it. And I've had friends who have you know like died and have either committed suicide or like that have been lost, that couldn't see out of that dark place at that time. So I think some things to strive for are just to like help kind of open up people's view of other people in the world, and like have more understanding and empathy, and hopefully give them some tools to maybe think a little differently about a problem so they can overcome it, that kind of thing.
So how do you make people to connect with your imagination with the technology that you are using?
Yeah, I mean, technology is a huge part of it now, especially. Like, we're in such an interesting time as far as that goes. And personally, I have like embraced AI tools. I don't use it for writing. Like, I'm not an open AI writing guy. I just write because I can. But I do love Midjourney. And I've been messing around with Pika Labs and some of the text to video stuff. Pika just actually added a really interesting feature that helps with animation, where I can take a Midjourney image and I can type a line of dialogue into it. It will generate a voice, and then it will add lip sync, animated lip sync to an image. And it was the exact tool I needed for an animation test I was doing for that animated film that I'm working on. And I was like, this is insane. And I think what's sad is I think a lot of artists see AI as a threat, but I think in the long run, what they'll find out is it actually frees up artists to do anything they can imagine. Like when I was a kid, I couldn't just make a Pixar film from my garage. I wanted to. I tried to. I really tried. It did not work out. But honestly, a year from now or 2 years from now, a kid will be able to make an animated short or even an animated film on their laptop, or like even a tablet at that point, probably, right? Because with AI, it's not using the computing power of the computer or the device. It's because I do it on my phone. When I'm walking around, I'll be kicking out Midjourney concepts. And that is a powerful thing. At that point, like that's the thing too, like during the WGA strike, a lot of writers, because the studios were like, they're like, oh, we're going to use AI, we're going to replace you. But what the writers didn't understand, that were upset about it, and I can understand why they were upset about it, is that the way that technology works is you write into the computer and then a movie comes out. So writers, those same writers in the WJ were about to become gods and didn't know it. Like pretty soon they'll be able to just make films. You know what I mean? And it's more complicated than that. And personally, I still want to make films the old way, but that may not be available by the time I get to the place that I'll be in, or the whole thing may change so rapidly. But, pretty soon indie filmmakers will be able to compete with big budget films is what's going to happen, which is both really exciting and also kind of terrifying, right? Because there will also be a massive oversaturation of films in the market. It's like YouTube, right? It's just a sea of content. And so then it comes down to how are you going to distinguish yourself and stand out from a crowd? Obviously, one is you need to generate content that an audience is going to connect with, and you need to be able to find that audience. So, PR and marketing and social media will be a huge part of it. But honestly, a lot of YouTube creators make a lot more money from advertising and everything else than independent filmmakers make now. It could be a step up. So, I think all we can do is embrace the technology and try to tell the best stories that we can tell. Because a lot of people are confused about what AI does too. Like I think they think that AI like replaces the creator, but in reality, it's more like how Iron Man works with Jarvis. You know what I mean? Like you request things and it'll give you pieces of it, and then you wrestle with it and you have to like really kind of fight with it until it becomes the thing you want. It's gotten a little easier, at least with Midjourney, where you can generate something in Midjourney and then bring it into Photoshop, and you can cut out the part that you don't like and replace it until it looks right. Or like, with the animation stuff I've been doing, I can go in and if I have a character that I've created, I can have the eyes close and the mouth close and the mouth open and the jaw will even move. And so I can get really good reference of the character. Eventually it'll just be the character, right? But like we're not quite there yet because it's still kind of glitchy unless you use a lot of extra processes and tools to kind of clean it up. There were some guys that did that amazing anime where they shot on a green screen and in order to stabilize it, and then they created this like whole anime short that was amazing using AI. But the tools are still a little ways away. Obviously, Sora will be a game changer when that's released. Sora AI from, the stuff from that looks amazing. So then it's just about giving us precise camera controls and being able to target areas and like dial them in and everything but eventually I think we'll be in a place that's kind of like Blade Runner 2049 where she's just in the room like creating these memories, right? It's going to be that kind of thing. And then it's like, so when you're in that, you can isolate an area and be like, put this green purple furry monster right there, and have it do this. And you need precise controls through the timeline as well, where you can have them do different things and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. But, it's already happened so quickly in terms of going from like traditional cameras to digital. And now with what's happening, and unfortunately, it's going to have like a kind of devastating effect on the industry in terms of the amount of people that work on a film. But hopefully what'll happen though is because the cost of the films will go down, hopefully an exponential number of more films will be made and that can compensate on some level. So, like for instance, animated films, right? There's only X amount of animated films that happen every year. That will while the animators will be decimated maybe down to 10% of what it is now per film, there may be a multiplier where now 20 times more animated films are being done per year. So, in that way, it could level out a little bit, hopefully. But either way, though, the way that AI is trending and evolving so quickly, it is going to hurt that part of the industry, and it's really interesting because I think a lot of people thought AI would replace very straightforward jobs first, but it's come right for creativity first. The creative positions, which is crazy. But yeah.
So the today's technology, like you said, one of your film is shown in Pakistan. Also, some of your films went out of US. So how based upon present technology, what is your observation? How the films are going to be reaching all over the world because
Yeah.
of the technology that we have today?
It's really tough right now because, what Netflix has done with their distribution model has kind of like wreaked havoc on distribution in general with streaming and everything else to where, indie filmmakers may make no money from the release of their films, in the current market. Now, what's good is I think like a lot of people are like, oh no, there's like ads on everything now, but I think adding advertising to streaming will help offset that, where hopefully there will be more money. And now with the WGA deal that was done with the unions, there Netflix and the other streamers have to release their streaming data, right? So like the actual numbers that go with the different content. But the key is how do we monetize that, and how do the creators get the proper amount of money from that where they can survive and thrive? And currently that isn't fully in place yet, except for maybe like the top five or even less of a percent of the creators and the actors and everybody that can actually put that stuff in their contracts and insure it, right? Um, but the way I see it going is if AI does what it'll probably do, I think something like a YouTube model will be what happens, where a creator like me might put out a few minutes per day of a project that adds up to a larger thing. So it's almost like a web series that builds into a proper episodic series or a feature film. And it's about being able to stand out and to create content where, like, if you can get serious numbers and people are really watching your show, then you will make money through the advertising potentially, or whatever way that it can be monetized. But there's going to be a lot though. Like it's going to be just a sea of content, even more than it is now, or I guess it's comparable because there's just so much now anyway. I think the difference is though, like there will actually be filmmakers in there doing it, as well as like the unscripted or like more like vloggers or whatever are there now.
So at last,
That's what I could see happening.
great. So at last, what do you say to my audience who is listening to you from anywhere on this planet about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I hope people get a chance to look into what I'm doing. Instagram's always a great place to look. My Instagram's just like at and then my name, Jason Ragosta. And that's me on most social channels. But yeah, I mean, my main thing is I'm just trying to work with great people and tell really cool stories. Some of them are very bloody and horrific, and some of them are more endearing and emotional. And then we got a little bit of action in there. But yeah, I hope people will take a look at what we're doing, and hopefully they'll like it. And if they don't like it, it's totally cool. No hard feelings. Because that's the thing. If you're gonna make strong choices and you're gonna commit to what you're doing, not everybody's gonna like it. It's totally cool. But hopefully enough people like it where I get to do more and more of it, and just get to keep playing with this stuff and telling stories and using my imagination and working with awesome people. Yeah.
I'll put your website link in the description of this video also on the screen. People who find
Cool.
the
Thank you.
video anywhere in the internet can able to see your website where all your social media channels are
Awesome.
integrated.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And as a creator, as a director, as a writer, as a storyteller, what is your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
Yeah, I've been watching them. They're really cool. Like I think you're very open and very nice, and like you pick very interesting people that are from all different places to like interview, which is cool. So like, yeah, I think you're doing a great job, and just keep going with it, and keep finding people and interviewing them and stuff. It's very interesting.
So, what is your observation? What you observed as a creator or as an observer
For
about
you,
my videos?
about your videos, you do a lot more listening than talking, which is interesting, you know. And so you really, when you have somebody on, you really let them kind of tell their story and talk about what they're there to do. Because sometimes, I've been on a lot of different podcasts and everything else, and sometimes you're on there and you get to talk like a little bit, and you're cued for like your little kind of bit of it. And this is a very different experience from that. So it's very cool. But I will say, I think you could talk a little more though, and we could find out more about you, and you kind of like get into more of a discourse sometimes, and chat, like talk about a topic a little more where it's a little more back and forth. Get a little more of your personality in there. That could be cool.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. This is the first chat since I want your work to be out completely, so that I
which I
just wanted you
appreciate
to
totally.
speak.
Yeah, yeah. But you want to develop your voice and your personality and become a known entity, then you got to put that stuff out there.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I did a master's in software engineering, also bachelor's in computer science and engineering. Right now, I'm working for a UK company as a DevOps engineer. So my
Very
full-time
cool.
job is doing engineering work, like software development or software engineering job. So that's
Mm.
my full-time job. Apart from that, I'm interviewing experts like you who are already in the industry, who are creating different things and who are trying to solve different problems or who are trying to create some value in the world on this planet. So I'm going different parts of the world and trying to explore different mindsets of different human beings who are coming from completely different backgrounds and different industries and who came from different experiences. So me being as a technologist and trying to understand different human beings from all over the world, what I'm going to learn and how this experience is going to be helpful in my life or in my career.
Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful. You know, like you're. I mean, that's a big thing in any business, right? Too, like in working in any sector, is like the more you actually look at the impact what you're doing has on different parts of things and how people are interacting with it and how they're using it and what their suggestions might be about how it could be better. Different people may have totally different outlooks, and it may just be a little thing that somebody didn't think of yet in a meeting, right? So I do think that sort of thing could be very interesting and helpful. And now it's all integrated, right? Like technology is an essential part of our lives. Between just like a phone or like a computer or like anything that we're interacting. I mean, even our TVs are smart now. Um, so I think everything's so integrated that, and it will just become more so, right? Isn't Elon Musk trying to put chips in people's heads or something now? So it's like we're getting into the biomechanical or bioorganic technology realm now. So it's like it's just too crazy, right? It'll be very hard to separate the two very soon, if not already. You know, yeah.
Great. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your
Of
permission?
course, absolutely, yeah, yeah, no
And
problem.
also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, absolutely, wherever you want.
I hope this conversation reaches, uh, uh, everywhere, and I hope your words, and your work reaches everywhere in the world.
Well, thank you so much, and back to you. I hope you do as well. That would be great. And thank you so much for inviting me and having me on. It's been a lot of fun talking with you.
I'll put your information like where you started and how you came into movie making and your background and the work that you have done in my website as well. People who visits
Cool.
my website can able to see the work that you have done and can able to follow you and can learn more from you.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason, again for your valuable time and giving me opportunity to interview you for my channel.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun talking with you about it.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Bye. Bye.